Simone, I want to ask you first, you know the vice president well. What's your takeaway from this interview?
I think the campaign should be proud this morning. You know, they're the top of the ticket, went out and did what she needed to do. And I also think Governor Walz answered some questions that people who are not familiar with him, right, that they needed to have answered, even though some of the things that have surfaced that he spoke to last night about his military record, right? These are things that if you live in Minnesota and have voted for Tim Walz before, or just familiar with him at all, you have heard this before. But look, I think, Jose, some of the discourse over the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks specifically, would have you believe that Vice President Harris hadn't done an interview since she became the vice president. And I think sitting there last night, it was clear that she was comfortable answering questions. I thought Dana Bash also did a good job pulling the layers back, if you will, asking the questions that people wanted to get the answers to. Always, people want more. And I think the best thing to happen going forward is, frankly, that we, the American people, get more opportunities to hear from the Democratic ticket in various ways. And so I would also expect that they should do additional interviews going forward, print interviews, in addition to what the vice president has been doing is gaggling at the side of her plane. But the no harm done in the interview and a little news broken. So that's good from a comms perspective.
Yeah, and I want to play for you one of this is really kind of an interesting and significant, I thought, moment when the vice president was asked about those race-based attacks from Trump. Listen to what she had to say and how she handled it.
I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any
same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
Yeah.
That's it?
That's it.
How do you think she handled that, Simone?
Yeah, you could see the body, as much as what she said, same old tired playbook. I also am looking at the body language and the look on her face. And the look on her face said to me, this assertion from Donald Trump is ridiculous. What she said is really important because in an interview like this, had Vice President Harris spoken to the attacks that Donald Trump had lobbed against her and these just really ridiculous criticisms, that would have been the news coming out of the interview. Everything else she said about putting a Republican in her cabinet if she is elected, to what she would do on day one, to her economic policy, to even her explanation about fracking and whatnot. None of those things would have been the headline. The headline would have been Vice President Harris responds to Donald Trump for the first time. And I believe that is one of the chief reasons why you did not hear more from her. Now, a debate stage is going to be a little bit different, though, Jose. And so I know the debate is going to be moderated by Lindsey Davis and David Muir at ABC. And I don't know if that's it is going to be enough there. But in an interview, that's what a candidate should do.
And David, one of the biggest issues, no doubt, for this campaign is the economy. Here's what the vice president had to say about her day one agenda and the economy.
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now.
David, how effective do you think this line was? Because, you know, there is a criticism of where is the specificity, and on the other hand, she answered it with some specificity.
Yeah, look, I don't think voters are necessarily looking for specificity so much as they're looking for an outline of where a president would take the country if elected. Also, what's really important here, and I thought the vice president did this well, is to meet voters where they are and let them know that the issues that concern them concern the candidate, right? So as she has said before, but she repeated here, and it's important, that prices remain too high even though inflation has cooled. The American people know it, and so do I. That is what she has said repeatedly. She said it again. One of the ways in which candidates often trip up is they don't speak to the candidates, to the voters, where they are in terms of the issues that most concern them. They don't acknowledge them And this is something she has done. Now, what she is going to have to do moving forward, I think, is do a better job of explaining her shift in positions on fracking and fossil fuel exploration, on enforcing the border. She's started to do that, but I think she needs to be a little bit more proactive in terms of explaining not just my position on fracking is different. Obviously, this is a huge issue in Pennsylvania, which many people consider a must-win state, maybe a must-win state. So what you want to be able to do is do what the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, told me last week when I asked him this question about the vice president's shift, is to explain not just that this is my position and you can trust it, but it's my position because it's a huge job creator in Pennsylvania and in other states. And I am concerned about jobs, even though I'm also concerned about the environment. So I think putting some more meat on the bone in terms of why she now thinks her new positions are the better positions is going to help guard against the attacks from the Trump campaign, which are totally understandable and within bounds, which is, why can we trust you if you used to believe this and now you believe that? It's the same sort of attack Democrats make when talking about the choice issue and abortion rights, with the president, the former president, trying to moderate his position on abortion rights and IVF. And the attack is always, we can't trust you because of where you've been. So in order for the vice president to head these attacks off and really capitalize, it can't just simply be, I've changed my position, but this is why I believe in my new position.
Yeah, I mean, and Simone, these are things that can be flushed out in, following interviews. And certainly if you have the time to ask her specifics on, well, let's talk about fracking. I think that I agree with you that there was some questioning on that last night, Simone. But where does and how does a campaign deal with what David was talking about? This line of attack, for example, that there is a flip-flopper.
Look, I think that there's a difference between what someone, not even a difference, but I think it boils down to what somebody believes. And belief is anchored in values, which is why I think the Harris campaign and the vice president herself settled on wanting to talk about her values. I'm pretty sure that they anticipated that this was one of these kinds of questions could come up. And there are various ways to answer it. What Governor Shapiro suggested is, in fact, one way to do it. But, OK, there are lots of job creators around the country, right? So are we going to make this one exception for fracking? What about this over here? So that's when you answer in that way, then you start to parse it. When you anchor something in your values, that's a little bit different. And she went further to say, which I thought was very smart. She said, when I had the opportunity, I was the person that cast a tie-breaking vote in the United States Senate to open up new leases. She said, so my record says that I have kept my promise. So it's not just what she said in her campaign in 2019 and then what she's saying now. It's also what she's done in between. And when given the opportunity, she did not shy away from, again, casting the tie-breaking vote that opened up new leases. So if she wanted to ban fracking, that's not something she would have done. And so that's a juxtaposition from Donald Trump, what he's saying, but also what he has done.
And David, Governor Walz was asked about misstatements that he made when he talked about holding a weapon of war, which Republicans have also seized on. Here was his answer.
The idea that you said that you were in war. Yeah. Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
What do you think of that line there, David?
Well, I thought it was a little bit weak. I mean, he didn't really address the misstatement, and there have been a series of misstatements that we found out about since he was announced as the vice president's running mate. I just don't think at the end of the day it's going to matter all of that much. Usually when voters assess vice presidential candidates, what they want to know is that you can pass the commander-in-chief test if you're called to serve in that position. Where other running mates have gone wrong is when they don't meet that test. So I think this is a distraction for the Harris campaign. It's an annoyance. It hasn't really gotten in the way of their momentum so far. I thought he could have done more to put this issue to bed by just saying flat out, yes, I did this. Yes, I shouldn't have. Asked, answered, and then moved on to the pivot, which I thought was a very politically adept and well executed pivot. But he's going to continue to be asked about this. He'll be confronted with it in the debate with J.D. Vance, no doubt. But it's just not the sort of thing that's going to derail a campaign. Look, even J.D. Vance, for all of the faux pas he experienced in the opening weeks of his, after becoming Trump's running mate, that's not going to derail Trump. Only Trump will derail Trump if that's what happens.